Number one is the mage. You've probably heard me talk about it before, but the mage is actually kind of absurdly powerful in a lot of different ways. Now, they do have a little bit of drawbacks, but for the most part, they're just very good. So they get one of the most important things, especially in the early game, magic recovery. In the overworld, combat recovers MP each time an enemy is stunned or defeated. So if you just stun an enemy before you fight them, you'll get, it's only 1 MP, so this doesn't scale well, but it's so good in the early game. And then when you defeat enemies, like if you get into a room where you get to defeat a bunch of enemies, you can like leave the dungeon, go back in, and then the enemies will respawn. So you can, this will give you basically infinite MP if you have patience. Now the downside is on the overworld combat, the mage is like dog shit. They're very, very, very bad. It's hard for them to even break yellows. So it's hard for them to actually stun yellows unless you like dodge behind them, hit them in the back and stuff. Like you could do it, but compared to most of the other archetypes, this is one of the weakest overworld fighters, but it's mostly meant for AoE farming. So do keep that in mind. But also, this is the most coverage of basically any baseline archetype in the game, especially early on. If you have bot, blizz, you know, fire, ice, and lightning, you are going to be able to cover most weaknesses. It's very easy to get a little bit of a dip into the seeker because you already start there, right? So you're going to be able to inherit wind, or if you want, you can also inherit light. So you could basically be a jack of all trades, right? So you can always just have all the damage you need of any type, so you're making sure you're exploiting weaknesses. And when they don't have any weaknesses, it's still fine because you're doing pretty respectable damage. They are mostly meant to exploit weaknesses, but their damage is far from negligible, especially when you get something like Magic Circle, right? Increase magic attack by 10%. It increases further if you have multiple archetypes of the same. I'm not exactly sure if you need a bunch of mages. I mean, it could be good, but that's a little, unless you're farming a lot of MP on the overworld, I don't know if that's going to be the most efficient. Although at only 4 MP a pop, you could do pretty good. Now, another reason why they're really good is actually their synthesis skills. They have the cheapest way to do, I'm pretty sure it's the cheapest. I mean, there's like a tie with like the cleric, but deals weak fire damage to all enemies. So they have very early, very cheap AoE attacks. AoE attacks are not cheap to come by early. Obviously, you get a lot of them over time. So you do get the ability to, which is awesome. You get the ability to do heavy single target damage, or you get the ability to do weaker AoE damage. Or if you have 2 allies and you have like a team set up to do it, right? If you have another mage, if you, in fact, you do all 3 mages, you could use Metaphor. Deals severe magic fire damage to one enemy. So this is like the earliest way to get a severe damage. Super powerful ability, especially when you have 3 of mages all with Magic Circle. Suddenly this is going to be nuts. So there's just a lot of flexibility here. Very powerful. Great damage, great utility. It could be a little hard to sustain early on, if for characters that aren't your protagonist, because you want to go around and basically farm things. But really, you can't go wrong with having a mage, unless you're fighting the goblins, because they don't have a magical weakness and they get way stronger when you do that. Don't use these against goblins, but pretty much everything else is good. The second one I want to highlight here is the warrior. I'll admit the warrior seems a little boring in terms of what they do, right? And when you're doing, instead of doing all different types of magic attacks, you're just doing slash attacks in a couple different ways. And you'd be right? The warrior is really good until he's the worst. When they're like resistant to slash and you don't have like the right skills inherited, it could just feel like, oh my God, why did I bring this character? But as long as they're not resistant to slash, this character basically does the most straight up damage early on. You could make an argument for the pugilist, the brawler, but I actually haven't had as much success with the brawler dealing damage as I had with just the warrior. And that's because the warrior gets slash boost, which increases your slash attack by 20%. They get heat up, which increases their physical attack by 10%. I mean, these are fucking premier top of the line passes. Let me go higher. These are really good passives that you're going to want. Not to mention that they have like a relatively good attack here with Slicer. Weak physical slash to one enemy 2 to 4 times. Little side note, this luck does affect how many times this is. You're more likely to get you're more likely to go towards the 4 as you have more luck. Is that going to be, are you going to try to get more luck on your character just for that? Probably not, but it is kind of a little interesting thing. A magical tooth told me that. Critical strike kind of sucks. Low hit rate, but it always hits. Maybe if you could really, really boost your hit rate, this becomes a guaranteed crit, but I haven't really thought critical strike is very good. It also doesn't say how much damage it does. It just says always deals critical physical / damage. But overall, yes, it's kind of a boring character, but damn, heat up is so powerful and slash boost is crazy powerful. I find myself, even if I switch stroll, I inherit these. Now, you can make up for their weakness of this because there's 3 different, martial skills. You could just pick up a different ability here. Like you could pick up one skill from the brawler. You could pick up one skill a little bit later on, more in the mid game. You could pick up a skill from the gunner. You could pick up the, oh man, it's actually a little bit later too. For this, if you get later, you get the heavy rush, right? You can get more pierce damage as well. So it's not too hard to cover your bases. But besides that, they also have the round slash. So in situation, this is basically the same skill as what the mage has, but it costs twice as much mana. Weak physical slash damage to all enemies. However, this ability, even though it's really expensive, it honestly just kind of turned out to be more powerful a lot of the time. Also, it helps kind of divide the MP cost, right? So the 14 comes from you and whatever character you're using. But if you are using a like a third party to kind of, obviously you have a third character, so you can kind of drain his MP with AoE, and then you could also use the mage, kind of switch off. That way you have bigger, more AoE options. It's a very, very powerful skill, especially early on, although not super efficient. Also, Bamboo Splitter is pretty darn good. It doesn't come up that much because you have to land a killing blow to get an extra turn icon. This is good if you're fighting multiple targets. One of them is weak, and then you could attack the other one. It's still, I don't really use it for that. Really, it's just a heavy slash attack, which is just pretty good. This will do more damage than, if you have a character that doesn't have any way to exploit weakness, you can kind of spend their turn icon here instead, and that'll help you. Especially if you have a way to like add weakness, so you can make them weak to slash. Then suddenly you're only using, not 2 turn icons, we're using a half of 2 different turn icons. Also, they do get the Stone Cleaver, severe physical slash damage to one enemy, adds a turn icon on a killing blow. This takes your whole turn basically in the early game. Not sure if this is going to be worth it until you get a 4th party member, but if you have triple warrior is like a legit build, right? They all get heat up, and then you can have them kind of specialize in different things. You can have one of them mostly be a healer and then attack. You can have one of them mostly be like, maybe a punching person or a buffer. But the point is, if you have them all warrior, they all get heat up. And the way heat up works on the 3rd character is actually pretty weak. If you have 4 characters, that's when it gets strong. So the way it works on the merchant is if you have 1 character with it, you're right, you get, because they have something that makes items 20% more effective. The first one makes it 20% more effective. The second makes it 40% more effective. The third makes it 50% more effective. So he goes 20, 40, 50 total. And then the 4th one brings it up to 200% effective. So it doubles it basically. So it seems like the 4th character is probably really important. So this probably goes like 10, 20, 25, up to maybe 50% more damage, something like that. Either way, huge. Once you get up to 4 warriors, this is actually a legit build. Bamboo Splitter, Peerless, Stone Cleaver are both very good for single target. They also have good single target options. Round Slash is really good AoE early on. And honestly, this is just a damage dealer. Stroll is kind of a goat. You already knew this is coming up. I'm talking about the Merchant here today. So the Merchant is kind of, I think they fall off pretty hard in the mid game. And probably until you get the next like level up of it, right? Right now it has kind of fallen off where I'm at in the story. It's just because it doesn't do damage and it doesn't get any offensive stat boosts. So this is a low damage character. At this point, it's better suited to just landing crits and getting your turn icons always, or being a buffer, or mostly just being an overworld fighter. But I'm telling you, in the early game, this thing is jacked. So alchemy for the hero. Chance of winning a small sum of money each time an enemy is stunned or defeated in overworld combat. That's a mistranslation. You always get money. Whenever you kill something, you get money. It seems to be based on the level of the enemy you're fighting, because it started early game, it was like 300 an enemy. Now I'm getting like 800 an enemy, give or take, you know, sometimes more, sometimes less. So it is scaling up. And this honestly, like, this made me a millionaire. How much money am I at right now? I'm probably not at a million because I just spent a bunch, but I'm at 868,000, right? So like, oh, let's go back here. So I'm at 868,000. So that is absolutely a ton. You don't need to worry about money for the whole game if you use the merchant to just play as you're playing, and you just use it to kill your overworld things that you can kill. If you farm even a little bit, this will give you so much money. Also, it gives you a bunch of items. So I have like 99 of multiple different stat inducing items and debuffing items, just because enemies dropped them like crazy. Also, this is actually, earlier in the game, one of the most powerful things you could do is just have 4 merchants, or, you know, I guess at this point 3 merchants in the early game, and then just use items, like use the consumables that you have. They're not that expensive to buy either. You could buy like the ones for like 100 gold at the nighttime shop, or that deal 100 damage rather. And then you'll get 50% bonus damage. So all your characters are like guaranteed to do 150 damage per attack with no resources, right? And they can always make it so they're exploiting weakness, so you can do it 6 times. One of the most powerful early game things you could do is just have 3 characters with Trader Summit. Super powerful, super powerful. Now they do have double weakness. They do get fire dodge. Debt collection tends to be pretty fucking terrible. It just steals magic, you know, mag from an enemy. So you could, not magic, but magala. You could use that to kind of inherit more skills. It's too expensive. 100 MP is too much for this. It's like, and what it gives you is like 1,000. I'm like, that's fine, but I have like 80,000 right now. I haven't ever felt the need to use this. But gold attack does cost money, but early game, it doesn't always crit. But if you go into luck, and if you get a little bit, if you go into the, if you come here to the brawler and you take diligent discipline, you get a 5% crit boost, and you have that on, you have 3 merchants, all of them with crit boost. Suddenly this is always critting, but it doesn't do that much damage. It does good damage early, but it definitely falls off. You're definitely going to need to kind of make sure you focus on other characters to deal damage. But the items will carry you really far. The money will carry you really far. The synthesis is bad, but not terrible. Sometimes it's pretty good. Removes nearly all beneficial effects from all enemies. All reset is good, but it's like so fringe when it's actually super good. It's like certain bosses will have certain mechanics that they could be like, they're concentrating, they powered up for next turn. And then they use like a heat razor. So they buffed all their stats, they concentrated so they're buffed next turn. This will just turn that all off in one cast, which is really good. But outside of that, you almost never use it. Fortune slots, too risky. If you don't crit with it, it takes 2 turn icons for just like a little bit of damage. It's not enough damage because it also can miss a lot. But overall, the merchant is just kind of the king of the early game. Gives you all the money you want, makes your items hit. It makes your normal pixie powder or whatever that normally heals for like 50, like full heal your whole team in the early game. Make sure you get more items. Make sure you doesn't care about having weakness, just crits, and will just absolutely destroy the early game. As you get later on, though, you are going to need to do something that gives you damage. So you don't want to like hit this at level 20, and then you could keep it here at level 20, but you will struggle if you rely too heavily on the merchant. At least I kind of struggled a little bit for my protagonist because I didn't have other stuff leveled up. And then I was like, he's not doing any damage. So I kind of branched out and started leveling up a bunch of stuff. But yeah, guys, that is it for this video. Those are the 3 best early game archetypes. And yeah, let me know what you think. Where do you agree with? What do you disagree with? And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out. Flip flops. Bye.